E.M. Hotep Black Family. It's only Tase. Uh, I'm here to let you know that it's officially published. It's officially published. We have the pro black. We have the Book of Power is now published, and it's ready for your consumption. This is going to be the reading. All right. So today's episode. Today, this is the Bro Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio. This is episode 46, and it's a Book of Power AMA and a rundown. You know, AMA stands for Ask Me Anything. You know, let me tell you about this book, though. All right. So the book has uh, it's 545 pages. All right. The dimensions are 8 by 11. Okay. Most books are say 6 by 9. Okay. So the dimensions are 8 by 11, and then on top of this, like I said, 545 pages, and I fill the pages up, top to bottom. All right. This book, how it started off was I was first thinking to myself, let me give you guys the best that we've produced so far, you know? And I'm talking about, regarding like our ancestors, the best that Garvey said, or the best that Amos Wilson said, or the best that uh, Delaney and Dessalines said, you know? Uh, give you some Yah Santawa, give you some Amy Jacques Garvey, give you some documents that we need as a people to associate with. So, for instance, one of the documents that's in there is the Constitution of Haiti, right? The one that Dessalines authored, and then also analyze it and let you know what happened, what went wrong. But here's the thing about the creative process that's so unmentioned is that when you start tap it into the creative process, tap it into your creativity, you start getting, I don't want to say it this way, but you start getting insight from the ancestors in a sense, and you go above and beyond what you thought you were going to start off doing. And so that's why, and this is something that I actually emphasize in the book, which is, if you, first off, the main thing is this, like, whatever you want to do, just get out and do it. You know, you might not be ready, but that's just the thing. Now, I do think that if you have something unique you want to contribute, that's all the better. But regardless, whether you think you're right, whether you think you're wrong, if you want to do something, just go out and do it and keep your mind open, you know? So some of the documents there are also, just classic, classic documents that I had once upon a time, right? And they're there to show you that even though I wouldn't agree with them today, right? Even though I wouldn't agree with them today, and it's not too many, maybe just one or two, right? But even though I wouldn't agree with them today, it's what started me off. You get what I'm saying? It's like you, the path toward consciousness, unfortunately, until we start to put together programs uh for our liberation, right? Or uh for our repossession of this earth, okay? Until we start putting through programs for that, right? Like we have to follow, the roads that we otherwise wouldn't have to, you know? So I'm gonna say peace to the family who's in here. But that's my whole, like, this book right here. It's just a tremendous book, and I want you to like, I want you to ingest it and read it, you know? So I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna try to show you what it looks like inside. So, of course, we start off with a libation, right? We start off with a libation, and and eventually we get into the introduction, right? So I'm gonna just give you some of this introduction, right? So of course, I tell you Asante Sana, obviously, right? This is what the book, what you read in the description of the book, and maybe I should explain it to you, right? But this is the book of power. Okay? With this you can build nations. But Undugu, take to heart that the advice that nothing works in theory, all that works in works. All right? You're going to need to work. Our race now depends on you, for you looked at a 500 plus page book and took up the challenge. Right? This book is a challenge, okay? Read this from cover to cover, then work like your life depended on it because the quality of your life does. This is not a history book. All words in this book are heavily edited. Again, all words are heavily edited. This is not a text for history, it's a text for history making. This is our story. This is carefully crafted and cautiously Now, this is carefully curated and cautiously crafted to create a caliber of African that can be called on Cobia, the consummation of consciousness. African, your destiny awaits you. Power is your reward for work. Nita yetu. So like first thing that obviously jumps out is what is Nita yetu, right? So in Kiswahili, I can't remember the word for earth in Kiswahili, but in Kiswahili, you would say, let's say, the word for earth, and then uh, na yetu, no, ni yetu, ni yetu. So basically, ni yetu would be, is ours, right? But when you go to Medu Nature, right, the word for earth would be ta. And so, but they also have a different grammatical structure. Instead of what we have in, Kiswahili and in English, which is subject, verb, object, in Medu Nature, the standard sentence would have been, sometimes at least, verb, subject, object. So Nitaya 2 is pretty much written in the verb, subject, object. So ni being is, ta being the subject, earth, yetu, is ours, right? Uh, Tells you that the earth is ours. And this is something that we don't really seem to grasp in this quote unquote consciousness movement. And this is something that, is just an additional, you know, uh, an additional stance that we should take, right? The idea here is that real talk, we we because a lot of times we're like, yo, it's just Africa, or let's say we say a Bibi Fahodie, which means African liberation, right? It's not just Africa. Our ancestors didn't stop at just Africa. You understand? They didn't just stop at Africa. They didn't say, "Hey, look, we're at the border. We can't go anywhere past this." You know, or we're just one people according on this land. No, we understood that that was the land that we originated in. Anybody could understand that was uh, a rich blossoming land. But we didn't stop at Africa. We have to start looking at the whole earth as ours. you know and this is among the other, like the other things that we have to start grasping, because one of the big threats to us as a people is what is essentially the destruction of this earth. Okay. And by the destruction of this earth, I mean, uh like, let's say, global warming, right? And the fact that we are, in a sense, impotent. We are impotent to this threat. We're impotent to the different threats that are posing against us as Black people. And the only way we're going to get out of this impotence, right, is if we as a people acquire power. And the question becomes, well, what is power acquisition? You know, and what power acquisition is what it always has been. So one of the things I break down in this book is, of course, that there were different power models throughout our story, right? Or you could even say throughout history, right? Because one thing you learn when you come into consciousness, right, is that at the core of a lot of these quote unquote Western civilization is uh like Kemet. So all of them kind of derive from Kemet. They're like perversions, bastardizations, whatever you want to call it, but they're perversions of Kemet. And but what does that mean? Right? That basically means that the Kemet model for power is at the center of a lot of these other like these later civilizations, quote unquote civilizations, right? So you have like say Greece and Rome, and you could also have Elam, Indus, so on and so forth. But when you pick up on and you study this history, you realize that Kemet itself was a child of Khenshu. Like some people call it Kush, some people call it Nubia, or some people call it Ethiopia, whatever you want to call it. Kemet was itself a colony of Khenshu, right? And as well was the Indus Valley civilization, as well was ancient Minoa, as well as ancient China. The ancient Khenshu went out and set up colonies all over Africa. I mean, sorry, all over the world, right? And when you understand that, you got to say to yourself, well, what was the system that they first put together in order for our ancestors to be powerful where they are? And so this is something that you would break down into the book. This is something that you would break down in the book. But in essence, what it was and what it is and what it always will be is what they were doing was what we could call nation building. Okay? And what nation building entails is essentially, you know, is essentially something that we have to start doing, or else forget it. Forget everything. Because what's going on right now is this white boy is finna destroy the planet. Okay, he's finna destroy the planet. Case closed. End of story. And it's written down. He tells on himself. He says, "Yeah, look, global warming is a real threat, but number one, it threatens the global South. Number two, it's not an immediate threat. So by the time that it really kicks in, I personally, this white boy personally, would be dead. So he don't got to worry about it. But of course, I mean, and who knows? Maybe you'll be dead too. Who knows? But your children won't be. And the reality is that he knows that he's destroying this planet. He just figures, well, why should I care? Because that's part of his mo. That's part of his thinking. Uh, but you got to realize that when the Earth, reacts in the way that it must in order to save itself, right? It's not going to be discriminate anymore. You understand? It's not going to be discriminate anymore because you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You get what I'm saying? You're letting this white boy say the earth is his, and you're just going along with it. You understand what I'm saying? So like I said, we're gonna go to this book, and I'll give you what it says. So the book is divided into 5 parts. Okay, so the 5 parts. I write this in the introduction. The 5 parts are as follows. The first, like the fifth, is short. There I will give you advice on speaking, and its importance in our story, right? And let me just elaborate on that. Speaking in our story is Medu Nefer, right? Medu Nefer is good speech, but also good behavior and just being a good person, right? That's something very important in our history, in our story. And you see this in Dessalines, you see this in Marcus Garvey, you see this in Hannibal. Not only are they great orators, but they're all around good people. And of course, I'm going to show you, you know, Dessalines, Hannibal, and Marcus Garvey's words. But I'm also going to analyze it, and give you really sound critique, really sound, corrections, critiques, so on and so forth, right? So, like I said, then I will give 3 speeches when I write as though I were the ancestors I hold in highest esteem, which is, of course, Kandake Akompong, as Queen Nanny. She's a leader of the Maroons, uh, an ancestor, right? I say Kandake and Zinga, one of the greatest military threats to Eurasians during the Ma'afa, and of course Nesut Taharka, the last Nasut of Africa before global black supremacy was replaced. And then, like I say, for Taharka, you are in for the treat of your life. I will also share the written words in the best translation transcription edition I could render. The treat is that one of his speeches is an actual prayer to Amun. Amun is the ancient nature of all African people. The value of this is immeasurable. Dua our ancestors and dua Amun, right? Uh, that's actually really heavy. Okay, so while I started researching for this book, like I said, I wanted to write three speeches for the ancestors that I figured that they had no writing, like you couldn't hear them, uh, and so I said, let me write three speeches for them. But then I came across the reality that you could find Taharka's speech. Now the trouble is this: that when I looked for it, only white people were circulating it and seeing value in it. You know, only white people were circulating the words of Taharka and seeing, immense, tremendous value in it. So I said, let me take this and give it to our people, right? But but the reality is that when you look at it, Taharka, like if you know who Taharka is, okay, Taharka is a part of, like let's say the Kenesu movement, to restore ancient African culture. Like ancient Sankofa. He was like, "Look, we're gonna go back to our roots." After he saw like Kemet was messing up, he was like, "We're gonna go back to our roots." And in so doing, he builds up and promotes Amun. Okay, and if you pay attention to Africa at all, right, you'll realize that all over Africa, even today, like the worship of Amun is almost paramount. Okay, in many respects, and of course, a linguist could like point to you to different nations in Africa, or the different groups, ethnic groups you want to call them, who have let's say creators that are derivative of the name Amun, right? Or the names are derivative of the name Amun. And of course the big one would be the Akan, who have Unyame, which if you move it around, it's Amen, so on and so forth, right? And of course, like I didn't mention this in the book, but everybody knows. Well, a lot of people know that in the what do they call it? The I want to say Judeo-Christian, I don't know, or the Christian faith or whatever. Even the Muslim one though, uh, you have what is like you say Amen after a prayer. So as to say that everyone kind of recognizes that the real name of the African nature would be Amun. You know, so that right there is obviously of immense value. But I say it's even more value because you have Taharka, an actual prayer from one of the greatest Africans of all time, like by any metric, you know, actually praying to Aman, and you have his words, and it's just, I mean, like when I like, it was one of the things that nearly brought me to tears reading. You know what I mean? Like because if you know his life, you'll see like you just be outraged, and I might give you a little bit of you know I might give you a little taste of it right now if maybe if you ask me, right? But the yeah, that's like for me it's like what like you never come across something that valuable, you know? Like you never come across something that valuable. And for those of you who have the book, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Uh So let me tell you about the second part. So I'm grateful for the second part too. Like I said, the original intent of this book was partly to share the speeches circulating on the Eurasian's internet that may not necessarily remain accessible, but as some were very qualified, I endeavored to make a record of the best quality and curate and edit it to the best effect of our people. In the second part, I provide words from the top three male speakers you can hear and the top three female speakers you can hear. Then I also include another five legendary speakers whom no audio recordings exist of. These lists are exceptional. For the top three men, you have Marcus Garvey, Julius Nyerere, and Maurice Bishop. And for the top three women, you have Sister Soldier, Barbara Sizemore, and Affiong Affiong. Uh, the top five legends are Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Hannibal Barca, Carlos A. Cooks, Ya Santoa, and Bookman Dutty. Yeah. Prefacing each, like most additions to this book, is empowering, substantive, and didactic commentary by yours truly, Onitase Kumat. And once again, like all words in the book, everything is heavily edited. There's no a spiritualism, so I took that out. And some words were changed, removed, kata wakata for best effect. This is excellence. If you can record yourself speaking these speeches and share them, promotion of the book, these are words that need to get out, right? So basically, I get uh, the top three audios you could list, like the top three people you can hear from, so you can hear from Marcus Garvey. There's recordings of him. You can hear from Julius Nyerere. There's recordings. You could hear from Maurice Bishop. There's recordings, uh, and you could hear from Sister Soldier. You can hear from Barbara Sizemore. You could hear from Affiong Affiong. Affiong Affiong is, I mean, and the thing with this too is that from this list of people, like most of them are not really too promoted in our consciousness circle. So maybe Marcus Garvey, sure, you know, but like when it comes to Julius Nyerere, whose name I find hard to pronounce, right? But when it comes to him, you hardly really hear about him in the positive way. This man was amazing. Okay, insofar as you have to understand that he united two countries and nearly united four, and there's not really anybody else who does that. He unites two countries. That's why Tanzania is a thing. You know, as opposed to what it was before. But he unites two countries, and he makes it so that like ethnic rivalries are gone. He puts an African language as the main language, and all the other languages kind of fall back. That's like leadership, and that's something that you have to really understand, that leadership is paramount for us as a people. And he's a great example. And then Maurice Bishop is another one. But of course, when it comes to Maurice Bishop, which was excellence, like you could see how he just develops his small country, right? Small country, like about the size of a city, real talk, a city in Africa. But he develops it so that like the people have mass participation, the people have you know exports, the people have they get wealth generated for them, that their bills go down, they're able to repair their homes, they're able to get running water, all like this is leadership examples. But then like I said, a lot of us, what we circulate amongst ourselves isn't of this quality, of this caliber. These are people with power, using that power to great effect. But then, when it comes to the sisters, I put in the book, I said, look, a lot of them didn't, like the great speakers at least, didn't really have the power, right? But then they're like immaculate, you know? When they talk about Sister Soldier, it's like the things she says, like the power and the passion she has. This is something that really we as a people often neglect. The passion and power, because a lot of times we will have people who advocate for us as a people, and you don't hear the passion. You don't hear the passion, you don't see the passion. It's just nonchalant. Oh yeah, this blah 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 blah. But in that way, it's almost a disservice, because people, you want to move on passion. You want passion in how people engage the material that they are, if they are passionate about. You want to be awake when you're hearing them, right? And like when it comes to like Sister Soldier, Barbara Sizemore, it's excellent. But then there's this sister that's really like we kind of sleeping on her, okay? But her name is Affiong Affiong, and I'm telling you, you should look up her speeches. You know, I decided to preserve one, and maybe that's one of the ones that I want to read to you while we just sitting and giving the rundown, right? But maybe you should remind me, or what have you. But the point being that I give you these examples, but I also give commentary, really insightful, really powerful commentary. And the commentary, all of it's like a build up towards what would be a program for 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 unity. You know what I'm saying? A program for African unity. Because what we don't have, unfortunately, a lot of people, what we don't have is a program for Pan African unity. And in that way, we are like we're being deprived of that. Because real talk, if we're about nation building, the only question is, how do you nation build? A lot of times we just say things. We say we're nationalists. How are you a nationalist? What does nation building entail? These questions you want answered. You know, these questions you want answered, and it's not happening. Like it's not happening, and that's one of the things that I'm going to show you in this book, because I'm going to show you other African people who, like other great African people who may have said things, and yet there's no program to do any of the things, or there's no program that would make any of that reasonable, or viable, or realistic. And this is something that I really want to get at you with, right? So the next thing I say, but the book does not end there, right? For this third part, so I have I have 5 parts, like I said. For this third part, I share additional speeches from other worthwhile Africans. Some original, so that's some stuff I wrote. Many transcribed. This was a labor of love that took months of researching and transcribing, with a broken computer, no less. And just as before, the words are edited and prefaced with commentary. In this part, however, you'll get the essay that describes the program for Pan African Unity, right? So eventually you get the essay that describes the program for Pan African Unity. And I just tell you, like, try not to skip ahead. All right, it's beautiful, right? So the Book of Power is, my effort. Uh, so you follow it in due course, cover to cover. The benefit and the thrill of the program will be that much more inspiring. But the speeches vary here, as you can read it in the table of contents, and many subjects may you may think of will be addressed or remarked upon here. This is a wonderful collage of African thought and some of our greatest thinkers. Both Africanists and Eurasianists. So we had good thinkers, Africanists and Eurasianists, right? And I just let you know. I said you might not understand that now, but you'll understand that as you read further, right? I like everything, like almost everything under the sun. You know, every subject that you can think of, pretty much, uh, is addressed in this portion. Particularly if you want to think about love, if you want to think about reparations, if you want to think about nativism, identity, if you want to think about any of that stuff, an ancestor probably said something eloquent and great about it. And if not, I have excellent commentary to go along with it, right? uh so then you fast forward, part 4 are the documents and dialogues in our story, right? So again, some original, some transcribed, all edited, and all prefaced. Here you'll have some of the most important documents in the Our Story of African People, both ancient and contemporary. Now notice I said ancient, right? uh and this is like even more subjects, really. Uh, let's see, ancient and contemporary, and the best analysis I can provide to go along with it. As above, the variety can be seen in the table of contents, but again, don't skip ahead. Everything is here for you. That the book does what it has to do. Read it that you may gain all of the messages, because there's so many messages, and this is all going to be after you get the essay on what program we need as a people to move forward. Uh, and so it's just anyway, let's go to the next one. The final part, part 5, is a short one. I'll discuss, what I have done, what I want to do, what collectively we should aim to do, and certain insights. For instance, on the African curricula template and the calendar for the Ancovia, right? Also the farewell, and the glossary, which you should consult often, and then that's it, and that's it, and the book will end. Now this is like after 500 pages. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't even like, my thing is this. I say, even in this introduction, I want to downplay how impactful this book is going to be, right? I want to downplay how impactful this book is going to be, because uh like I, like it's a new world. You get what I'm saying? It's a new world, a new perspective. And the work that can be done, that needs to be done. Like when we enough people read this, right? When you read this, you share it with people and other people get it. When they understand it, right? Like that's it. You get what I'm saying? Because let me say it this way. Let me say it a different way, right? Let's say part of the program would be, like let's say not just educating ourselves, but like how we educate ourselves, right? You got to realize that we don't have any higher learning institutions as a people, in our tradition or our perspective, our paradigm, right? And again, like I said, everybody's following a power model. There's no other people who are successful and progressing in this world, who have power in this world, who just don't educate themselves. You understand? The Chinese got universities. The British got universities, schools, so on and so forth. The Americans have their universities, their schools, their so on and so. Everybody has this, and yet we as a people don't. Like we have what we call, HBCUs here in America. We have certain schools in Africa, so on and so forth. But if you were to look at it and say to yourself, well, this is not really a black. It's not a black invention. This is not a black. This is not what black people are making. You understand? This is not from our source. This is westernization. And that's the main thing that we don't grasp that. Just how much we're being westernized and the impediments there. When I'm on social media, for instance, every 5 seconds or every once in a while, I hear somebody say, "Hey, look, I just got into this school. I just got into that school. I just got into so on and so forth." And 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 what that says to me is that and we're all celebrating. We're like, "Congratulations, you got into this school. Congratulations, you got this scholarship. Congratulations, you." But these are the people, when you go into these schools, when you go into these universities, you have to realize that their whole MO, the whole objective is to turn you into something against your own people. So every time you see somebody saying, "Hey, I just got into this," or "I just got something this," you realize that they're learning to be like the whole process is to go against you. And I could actually share a personal story with you in that regard, because like sometimes I would stumble upon my old papers, my old papers from college. And it's the weirdest thing when I saw, I was embarrassed about one paper, you know, because it was for like a feminist class or something like that. Of course it's not in the book, obviously, right? But it was for like a feminist class. And and the question from the teacher or the professor or whatever was, how can you promote feminism in can you how can you promote feminism in your personal life or something like that. And I was there sitting down saying, "Hey, look, I can go on political forums, because like I wasn't really on Facebook or nothing, right? I was like, I can go on political forums and post, pro feminist stuff, blah blah blah." And the teacher says, "That's great." And you have to realize what was going on there, you know because and if you realize what was going on there, you could also see what's going on social media today. You see what I'm saying? Because you have some, black people who may or may not be critically thinking, who knows, but they have professors who are telling them, how can you promote the Eurasian message? Okay, how can you promote the Eurasian message? And they're like, we will grade you according to, like you will get a better grade if you might be a better individual for promoting our particular mindset. And you're not going to catch it if you've never been to any kind of other institution. you know HBCUs are, you see what I'm saying, uh right? You're not going to catch it unless you've been to an African institution. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of our people are going through this. They're being indoctrinated even today. You know what I'm saying? And obviously it got worse because sometimes you'll say to yourself, why do I see so much of this nonsense today? Like, why are you even coming online and complaining about, experiences you had in your childhood? Or why are you even coming online and telling us about, bullying that you went through and colorism and this and feminism? And why are you even doing that? Right. And the reality is that a lot of them are told to do so while they're going to school, the same schools that we celebrate them going to. You understand? This white boy don't gotta do nothing. Like he has, because the thing is, he has the institutions already. He knows that you have, when you're young, you have high ambitions to go to his institutions. You understand? And when you go to those institutions, he is sitting over you, making sure that you fall in line with his message. And for most black people who go through this system, right? They don't even have any interactions with other black people on on an academic level. You understand? On an academic or an intellectual level, they don't even have experiences with other black people. The few might say, "Oh, well, I found a video online, and I agree with it." Blah blah blah. But even then, like I said, the depth of that video is not even clear. Because one thing you're going to see with a lot of our ancestors, and this was something that, like one of the reasons why I never got that, my PhD in a sense, right? One reason why I never got my PhD in a sense was because I said to myself, I don't want no white folk. Sorry, I don't want no black folk telling me that I owe my insight, my knowledge, intelligence, whatever, to this white boy, right? But what you're gonna notice about a lot of our elders, a lot of our ancestors, is that they all had the doctor name in front of them. Or not all of them, but a lot of them had, oh yeah, I'm a doctor, I'm a doctor, I'm a doctorate. I've been recognized by this white boy to so recognize me pretty much. And that's something that I did not want for myself personally. Because I could have easily been Dr. Onitase Kumat. And a lot of, and that back then, before I was even, whatever, a lot of people saying, hey, look, if I had a doctor name, it would make me seem a lot more legitimate, make me seem a lot more reasonable, let me seem like somebody you could listen to, so on and so forth. Oh, jeez. No, I ain't no doctor, right? Anyway, but what I'm saying is that I purposely didn't, peace, how you doing? Right? So I purposely didn't put that doctor there, you know, because that is, and now that I'm reading this book, or I wrote this book, I'm realizing that that doctor thing is one of the impediments. And if you actually look at a lot of our, excellent esteemed ancestors, of course, right, who have the doctor phrase, you can see sometimes, or a lot of times, you can see where this white boy, you know, uh, misled them. You could see where this white boy, or you could see the aspect to it. A lot of times you can see in what they're teaching too, or how they're teaching it, and how they're addressing quote unquote problems in our community, and why we can't necessarily solve things around them in a sense, right? But anyway, I'm gonna go to uh I'm gonna go see I'm gonna just jump into some of this book, right? So let's say in part one, I got the speech about thing. My question is, should I go for Akampong and Zinga? Should I go for, or oh sorry, Akampong, which is Nanny, and Zinga, or should I go for Taharka, right? And for that, on that note, let me actually do Nzinga. I'm just gonna go for one page for Nzinga. No, maybe I'll go for 2 pages, just so that you guys can see what I'm talking about, right? But hold on a second. Let me say, right, and so let's see. So this is Nzinga, right? So basically, I wrote like for the longest while for the African blood siblings, right? you have, you can see like way back, let's say 2011 maybe or 2012, right? You have me saying, actually no, from jump, I was saying the African blood system is going to have three particular ancestors, and that is Nzinga, Taharka, and Queen Nanny. Okay, because I was like, these just represent just like excellence in Africa, right? Now, when it came to this book, I had to reconcile what about Nzinga, sorry, what about Queen Nanny, who I call Akampong in this book, right? But what about how Queen Nanny was eventually she accepted the treaty with white folk, How is that excellence? But then you have to realize, like what I make her say in this book, and this is something that you have to realize as a people is that the Maroons were fighting for 10 years. Okay? And then eventually they got this treaty, and the treaty was you got to turn back, Africans who might flee into your community. And it's like, well, how could you turn back Africans who flee in your community? But it's like, do you understand that they've been fighting for 10 years and these same Africans were not doing anything? And the whole idea is that they were waiting for this white person to free them. And of course, when I say they, I'm talking about, like all of them are all of them are Africans, all of them are in Jamaica. So it's not no other, a lot of them, I mean, the ones who weren't fighting, some of them were my ancestors. Of course, some of my ancestors were Maroons too, but whatever, right? But my point is that some just didn't fight while other people were fighting. And how many lives they lost. And the idea that, oh, because you have this treaty now, oh, it's safe, huh? So let me go run and, how you going to turn your back on me? You turned your back on us from jump. And this is actually something that we have to understand about ourselves as a people. There are some of us who are going to be cowards. You understand that some of us who are going to be cowards, we don't need that. And one of the things I want to promote in this book is this idea of this oncobia. So I said that earlier, the oncobia. The oncobia are, by definition, it's the people who are first on the battlefield. But it's the brave people, it's the race loyal people. These people, this is what we have to be as a people. And it had nothing to do with your ethnic background, where you're from, none of that. It's are you a coward or no? Because if you're a coward and you're sitting back while other people are fighting, like really fighting for 10 years, then no, we don't want you after 10 years. We're not fighting for you. We're fighting for, like, in a sense, we're fighting for us. We're fighting for the brave to live brave lives. But if you want to sit back and let this white boy free you, we don't care. Go for it. Go for letting this white boy free you, right? But anyway, so I'm going to go to Nzinga, though. So Nzinga is another one that's curious, because you might say, well, wait a second. Nzinga, because Nzinga creates an alliance with with the Dutch or something like that. I mean, I don't know if I put it in this book, but I don't know if I put who it was. But she creates an alliance against the Portugal. A white group. She has an alliance with a white group against another white group. And this is like probably like the only person in African history to do this, as far as I know, right? Well, not African history entirely, but like during the Ma'afa, right? But that right there tells you what's the science of making alliances. Because the trouble with us as a people is that we would say things like, oh, you can't make alliances. You can't make alliances if you're weak. You understand? If you're weak, you can't make an alliance with anything, anybody. But if you're strong, then there's a science to it, you know. And I'm gonna break down some of that, but I'm gonna read to you how this sounds, when I'm making believe I'm Nzinga, right? So this piece is called "The Three Factors of Our Victory," and so she says, "Come forward, my top warriors. As I get older, I age closer to the grave, and in my wizened years I see the path ahead of us and must advise you, my children, how you must tread if we are to win this war. And though I wish to share many insights with you, what I must tell you now must never be dismissed. We are engaged in a race war, though not simply a race war. For though black and white are in contest, black and black is another contest that will decide whether our people will be chained or gilded. White and white too may play a role if we can manage as much. So far, it seems that we can. But what needs to be stated is that white men do not come from Africa, yet they are here. And they are here by virtue of black cooperation. I can name those nations who go against their race, but their names are of no moment. I do not need you to study names. I need you to understand our circumstance. White men came from across the seas. They navigated oceans to come for us, make war and gain prisoners. Yet in the vast majority of circumstances, no white men except bastards manage vessels in African waters. Blacks and white bastards have full command of white ships when they are within Africa's seas. From the trade ship to the warship, every vessel of every nation, the moment they enter African waters, are managed and manned by native blacks and white bastards. The unmixed whites are unable to stand the climate. The white man has in his possession tools which can fell even the strongest among us before we can get close enough to ravage him. The guns and their cannons have made their weaklings formidable foes in combat. Whole formations can be slain in a single barrage, and the old ways of honor are gone. We must be ever vigilant, as whites, bastards, and Ascari creep at all hours of the night, hoping to catch a sentry asleep to lay siege on a village and steal their most able across the sea. Yet who are they and why are they here? Take close heed. These whites are Western Eurasians. They were slaves for 700 years at the hands of Central Eurasians, their bastards, and Ascari. The Central Eurasians had first conquered the African pioneers of the ancient Arabian world, and among their war gains was technology which they used to conquer the northern edges of our continent, and read the secret works of our ancestors from the Nile Valley high culture. From this they held the advantage of medicine, metallurgy, chemistry, and other sciences that we lost in those distant conflicts that brought the end of our world supremacy. Thus, a powerful colony of white foreigners, their bastards and Ascari, ruled over the weak white population, our present foes. But they were reckless. From several conflicts, mainly outside vying and internal splinters, the whites of Arabia were defeated, and their savage slaves inherited the most advanced science and technologies of the world, including the knowledge of seafaring, the manufacturing of guns, and the military strategies of our ancient forebears. Understand, they are former slaves seeking to be enslavers, to enjoy the riches of Ptah without the merit of development. These historical flunkies, usually barbarians of no consequence. All right, anyway, that's the first page, right? So, and of course, she's gonna go in. She's gonna go in and explain to you, the history of white people. But you can kind of see that it's an Nzinga who is well versed in world history, but also who is going to outline how people in her time, right? If they were to be about Pan African unity, right? In her time, and what she was doing, mind you, right? What she was doing, mind you, was to create, was pretty much creating a super state in Africa, along the lines of keeping this white boy out, right? But she's there, she's explaining to you the process and why you would do that. At some point she explains, of course I'm the one writing it, right? But she explains that even if there were, because the thing that we don't understand is that there were black people who could make guns back during that time. Like, so essentially, there were black people who were, great at iron working, and they were able to create guns. But the reality is this, that if you're not united as a people, right? Or if everybody's against each other, or you can't trust the person right next door to you, if one little group knows how to make guns, that has nothing to do with the larger groups, because they're not going to give that technology to the larger groups. So what that tells you, though, is that there's African genius around us everywhere. But unless we have a nation, a strong nation to harbor and cultivate this, right? What you're going to have is you're going to have black people who just can't work together. You understand? I mean, I guess the better example would be when it comes to, I mean, not the better example, but we see this in white folk too. There was a time when only the quote unquote allies. I mean, basically, like, let's say in World War II or whatever, there were some people who understood. There was some science, like there's science for how you can create a nuclear weapon, right? And you had to be mindful about where those scientists were. You had to come together and cultivate those scientists, because if that science fell into the wrong hands, or if that science was in the hands of your enemies, right? Then your enemies would get the bomb before you did. You understand what I'm saying to you? So it was a race toward the bomb. It was a race toward the missile technology. You had to be protective of that technology. Now, what happens with Africa is that if we don't, but the technology is going to come up. You understand? And you just want to be there to have that technology. You understand? You want to be the nation to protect the scientists, the workers, the thinkers, the creative people. Otherwise, you won't have it. It doesn't matter if somebody could think, because right now, even in Africa right now, you have tons of genius, but it's almost like a brain drain in the sense of you have Eurasia saying, "Hey, okay, I see this smart African individual come through, and we'll provide you with all the luxuries, we'll provide you with amenities. You'll get what you need." Now, some people could say, "Oh, well, there's just a kid who, like, I think he probably does like wind farming, or he does solar energy or wind energy, whatever it is, right? He could do that easily, but it's like he's in a little village, can't, he's not really going to get wealth from that. He might have to end up doing what have you. But then you have white boys who could be like, hey, you know what? We'll give you a big studio. We'll do. This is the difference between having a nation and not having a nation. You know, and yet you could see the insight of and of course I'm going to break down how you get that nation, of course, right? But for now, but like I said, the book kind of teases at it. So as you come to the conclusion, which is at the end of uh part 3, right? As you come to the conclusion, you probably already figure it out, you know. But I want you to figure it out slowly. So let's just go to part 2, uh, and let's say who do you want to see in this part 2? I mean, yeah. So part 2, the highlight right here. I'm going to give you Dessalines. Okay, Dessalines is, or maybe even Julius Nyerere. So this brother does an essay called "The Importance of Adult Education," and you can actually hear that one. I mean, it's a little long, so I'm going to give you Dessalines, because Dessalines is another person that we really don't seem to grasp when it comes to when it comes to when it comes to how elegant and eloquent he was. I mean, sorry, eloquent. How eloquent he was, right? So this is the brother, and this is something that you have to understand. It's like we need African leadership, but lacking this, we we don't we don't get to what extent we are limited by the fact that we don't understand good leadership. You know, the impact of Dessalines versus Toussaint. You know, Toussaint had like he wasn't going to liberate Haiti. He just wasn't going to liberate Haiti. But Dessalines was. So Dessalines has a speech called "War for War, Crime for Crime, Outrage for Outrage." In the comments, I kind of say, look, if Africans understood war for war in its complex entirety, Africans would be free. And of course, the reality is Western Eurasians, and this is what I'm saying right here. I'm going to give you some backdrop. The reality is that Western Eurasians were enslaved by Central Eurasians, and they, after 700 years, brought war for war and became free. And they then enslaved us, and Baba, Dessalines, among others, brought war for war, and we became free. But we needed much more war for war, and this is where we must set a course different from, yeah, so on and so forth, right? But let me give you some of this. Oh, because like in this speech, I'm saying this right here. So I say in this speech, he discusses giving clemency to some whites. Okay. He talks about the false oaths and the spiritual deceptions whites gave, and he respected, and he discusses his willingness to trade with whites. And this is the ancient weakness of Africans, and then you can see this in the Chancellor Williams. So Chancellor Williams is in this book too, and and he tells you about how African people, how we as a people, hold on a second. This thing is telling me I got disconnected. Yeah, and he's telling me as we as a people were we wanted to trade with these white folk, and that's how they got in. That's how they got us. But let me say this right here. Let me start off with some of this war for war. Maybe not all of it because it's whatever. But let's go. Say crimes, the most atrocious, and until then unheard of, and enough to cause nature to shudder, have been perpetrated. The measure was their cruelty overflowed. At last the hour of vengeance arrived, and the implacable enemies of our rights are you there? Yeah. Okay. So it looks like I got disconnected. Uh, Looks like I got disconnected temporarily. Uh, Peace family. You guys have any let me ask. Yeah. So, but yeah, you see what I'm saying? Wrestling's uh, sure. I guess they don't want me. I guess the powers that be don't want me talking about Dessalines, huh? But you know, I don't care. Right? So yeah, like I said, Dessalines is here. And look at this right here. So this is something that you're gonna pick up on right here. So I said the measure was their cruelty overflowed. At last the hour of vengeance arrived, and the implacable enemies of our of our rights as men have suffered this punishment due their crimes. My arms, though raised over their heads, has too long been delayed to strike. Look, right here, look at this. At Ma'at's signal, your hands, righteously armed, have brought the axe upon the decrepit tree of slavery and prejudice. In vain had time, and more particularly the infernal politics of Eurasians, defended it with their forces. You have stripped it of its armor and have placed it upon your hearts, that you will be, like your natural enemies, cruel and merciless. Like a mighty overflowing torrent that tears down all opposition, your vengeful fury has swept away every obstacle in its impetuous course. Perish all tyrants over innocence, all oppressors of mankind. What then? We were bent for many ages under an iron yoke, the sport of the passions and injustices of men and of the caprices of fortune, mutilated victims of the cupidity of whites. After having fattened these insatiate bloodsuckers with our toils, with unexampled patience and resignation, we will again see that sacrilegious horde make an attempt upon our destruction without any distinction of sex or age. Are we men without energy, without virtue, without delicate sensibility? Should not we have plunged in their breast the dagger of desperation? Where is that vile African, so unworthy of this liberty, who thinks he has not accomplished the decrees of Amun by exterminating these bloodthirsty tigers? If there is one among us, let him leave. Indignant nature discards him from our bosom. Let him hide in shame far from here. The air we breathe is not suited for his gross organs. It is the air of liberty, pure, august, and triumphant. Yes, we have rendered of these true cannibals war for war, crime for crime, outrage for outrage. Yes, I have saved my country. I have avenged Africa. The avowal I make in the face of Ta and beyond constitutes my pride and my glory. Of what consequence to me is the opinion which contemporary and future generations will pronounce upon my conduct? I have performed my duty. I enjoy my own praise. For me, that is sufficient. What else can I say? The preservation of my unfortunate brothers and the testimony of my own conscience are not my only compensation. I have seen two classes of men, born to cherish, assist, and succor one another, mixed and blended together, crying for vengeance and disputing the honor of the first blow. Anyway, and then he's gonna go talk about something else there. But yeah, you can see like, woo, I'm telling you, you can have people have people really really getting carried away with that one, right? You also have Dessalines' caution to the Spaniards, but I'm just gonna jump to the next part. Oh, I have a lot of Carlos A. Cooks here. I'm gonna read you my favorite story in Carlos A. Cooks, matter of fact. And this is what I'm saying, like, and that's the thing too. If you want the Carlos A. Cooks book, just let me know, right? Just let me know, pretty much. Even if you don't want to pay nothing, just let me know. But here's the story I like from Carlos Cooks, which is the story of the Zulu warrior and the white man. And I'm saying to myself, look, you get this book in the kids' hands, and you let them read this page. This is page 108, right? So he says, there was a Zulu warrior swimming in the river infested with crocodiles. The Zulu had been swimming with these crocodiles all his life. He had the situation well in hand. A white man was sitting on the bank of the river, and when it appeared that the crocodile was about to catch up on the Zulu in the water and bite him, the white man drew his gun and shot the crocodile. The Zulu swam to shore, thanked the white man, and asked him to stay right there, for he had a present for him. The Zulu went to his hut and got his machete and came back and cut the white man's head off. Several old Zulus who witnessed the whole affair approached the young warrior and asked why he had cut the white man's head off, after the white man had thought he had saved the Zulu warrior's life. The young Zulu warrior replied, white man, you say, saved my life? Pretty soon the Zulu nations and the white nations are going to war. White man saved my life, me think he is good white man. Me feel me owe good white man a favor. Me kill good white man now. When war come, me owe no white man no favor. Come on, guys. Right now, I said, maybe we should rewrite this. Not rewrite the story, but we should have people like playing the story, talking the story. I'm telling you, look. Oh, anyway, so that's Carlos Cooks. Let's go. Let's go forward. Let's go to Like I said, there's additional speeches in the back. Uh, which one can I do for you guys? Uh, like I said, I got David Walker. I got Edward Wilmot Blyden. I'm just looking through right now. You got me, obviously, Onitase. Uh, you got Amy Josh Garvey. You know, these are, and look, a lot of this, I got a lot of John Edward Bruce here too, you know, and what John Edward Bruce would tell you, right, is uh what John Edward Bruce tell like John Edward Bruce is another one of those really uh rare books that unfortunately we as a people don't can't circulate, don't circulate, don't have access to. So I put a lot of that in here too, because I'm putting critique on it, I'm putting commentary on it, so it's all good. So Carl Say Cooks is one of those rare books, and John Ray Bruce is another one, right? But right here, this is Joseph Ben Yakinen. So Joseph Ben Yakinen is a really interesting person, right? Because he was an African nationalist. Okay, he was an African nationalist, and by African nationalist, I mean he was a Garveyite, right? The only thing with it was, and this is trouble with a lot of our ancestors, particularly like what they're doing history, is that they were like a lot of our people really cared about the quote unquote, Christianity, yada yada, a spiritualism in a sense, right? And so a lot of times when you listen to somebody uh Joseph Ben Yakinen, or when you listen to somebody like John Henry Clark, they're going to be talking about all the Jews this and all the Christians that and all Muslims this, and it's like who cares? Like we understand they're Eurasianists, forget them, right? Uh, but the thing with Joseph Ben Yakin is that sometimes he says really great things, and one of the things right here is going to be eventually he says something like America is he says it's probably the white man's country, but of course I don't care to say white all the time, so I say Eurasian man's country because the Asian man, the Chinese man is just as bad. Don't try to make it seem like it's only these white Europeans or whatever. It's the Chinese man, it's the Arab man, it's all that, right? So we're gonna go into this one, and one thing I want to also tell you is that I sometimes use no, I use the number when I tell you a date, I say WP. WP stands for without Pan Africanism. Okay, I say that to say that it's a difference between it being a year and the fact that you're using this white boy's year, this white boy's months, this white boy's everything. So of course for the Uncobia I promote our own months and our own years. I mean sorry, our own months, but I can't do my own years because we don't have a year. We're still without Pan Africanism regardless, right? So let's say this. Let's go to Yosef Ben Yakinen, and I'll say one thing we have to accept and learn at least. This is the Eurasian man's country. Whether you fought in 50 wars or not, now that's a reality. We may feel otherwise because we were born here, or because our ancestors were born here in the 1900s or the 1800s, or because we came here in the 1620s, WP. But this cracker looks at America as his. I'll answer that soon. Let me say, he looks at this America as his. Where am I? A matter of fact, for this ADOS question, I think this brother right here answers it, right? I mean, sorry, Joseph Ben answers it, right? But he says, ancestors were born here in 1620s, but this cracker looks at America as his, as a Eurasian thing. He looks at the Amerindian. He looks at the Amerindian that he took the land from as this land is his. He looks at us that way too. We refuse to accept it, but he looks at it that way. Now, until we're willing to beat him or to kill him, is going to stay like it is. And we're not willing to kill him. We're willing to kill each other. And until we stop killing each other and kill him, then we can start talking about changing. You have so many black senators, but nothing has changed and nothing is going to change. I could have all the senators making all the laws, but prominent Eurasian businessmen, even international, can call the US president direct as he lays with his wife, but not even the most prominent Ascadimus leader can contact the US president. He instead gets the secretary to the secretary to the secretary, and he may get through. What I'm saying is that they have numerous crackers who have a direct line into the U.S. president's bedroom, and they can get him anytime they want. But there's not one black man anywhere in America, and that goes for all of them who can get the Eurasians leader, right? And let me actually read what he said, like the commentary I put on this right here, okay? and then I could go into the ADOS question, right? But it says Baba succinctly sums up the sentiment that African nationalists need to take regarding the Eurasian world. Their nations are theirs. Notice the mirror with Garvey, because Garvey says the same thing. But also notice the solution he suggests. It's quote unquote bold, but it's also pointless to announce unless you put forth the mechanisms to execute it or organize it in some capacity. He does elsewhere suggest guerrilla warfare, but even that needs to be considered. What happens after? What happens after guerrilla warfare? Do you assume land in the middle of America, and what protects it or keeps it safe? If we're emulating the Maroon style in the vein of Kandake Akompong, how long can you hold out for a quote unquote treaty? And this is where a strong Africa comes into play, or is the intent to fight one's way out of America? These things must be considered and articulated when we discuss these matters, or it's empty talk. The classic novel, The Spook Who Sat by the Door, portrays an unrealistic guerrilla warfare unit and ends before any resolution can take place. And then of course I quote another article I wrote, which was proof to the law of Ma'at, shows, war is a response to Isfet, but war has to be toward Ma'at, calculus, blah, blah. You'll understand it when you read the book. But separately, however, note that Baba discusses the Eurasian elites and the absence of African elites. The issue with African nationalists has been the absence of African elites trained to be about the African nation. And so that kind of goes into the ADOS question. The reality is that, we have to look at this world or nations in general as elites and commoners, and you see what Baba, Joseph Ben Yakinen says about how white elites can call up their leader even if the guy's in the bedroom, right? If you know about Baba, he's pretty graphic. He likes talking about sex for some reason, right? But and he was famous for that. But but then African people don't have elites in America. So like, let's say you go to the ADOS movement. A lot of it, a lot of it, we have to say to ourselves, what is it that you want? What is it that you think you can get? If America is run by elites, right? Elites are just trying to get more wealth for themselves, right? They're not going to give their wealth to black people. Point blank, period. They're not going to do that, particularly if it's going to upset their commoners. If their commoners were on board with it, sure. But then again, like some of the demands, like I don't know what the demands are for the ADOS. I personally don't know what it is, but I've seen some people throwing around numbers like we want like $1 million each or something like that, right? And if you do the math to what they're asking, it's like more money that's in circulation. And like I said, if you do the math for doubling your economy and putting it all in the hands of black people, basically meaning that black people don't need to work, and also basically meaning that everything is going to be overpriced for white people, and that white people will not want to work either, and that their whole economy would crash because nobody's working. You know what I mean? And nobody could afford anything. I mean, the only people that could afford something are black people, but then suddenly you have white people who just wouldn't work. And by wouldn't work, I mean, let's say you have, $10 million, right? You could buy a grocery store, right? Now, and basically that's hyperinflation. You get what I'm saying? And by not you necessarily individually have $10 million, but let's say you collectively have, like you 5 friends have $10 million, right? You could then buy a grocery store. The grocery store is not going to just sell you the whole inventory. They're going to raise the price. So they're going to raise the price of the bread, obviously, because you're throwing away money. You're throwing out money. And if they don't raise the price, if all the prices stay the same, then you could just buy out every white person, right? And so it's basically supply and demand, because if you were to buy up a whole store, then nobody else could get any bread. It's a competition. You have to do that. But when you do that competition, what happens is that white people, then their dollars can't buy that bread. You get what I'm saying? And if and so basically, if bread costs $5,000 and they're still, working, let's say $15 an hour, they have to work several, so on and so forth, several days whatever, in order to afford, or even like a month, who knows, right? To afford bread, to afford a loaf of bread. No one's going to do that. You get what I'm saying? Why people are not going to do that? They're just going to hit the road and start killing people, pretty much, or start stealing. Just the same. It wouldn't be every black person, because like they said, ADOS is not every black person. I think I read yesterday that it's basically black people in America who can trace their lineage back to a plantation in America, which, yada yada. So basically, there's going to be a lot of black people who also, you know, cut out of this whole reparations paradigm, which makes sense, sure. But like I said, don't white people are not going to do that because they have to vote for it. They have to pass it. They have to, yada yada. And no white person, because again, the nation exists for the benefit of these elites who can call up the leader. So they're not going to do that because it doesn't benefit them in the slightest you know. And one thing I do want to say about the ADOS movement too, while I can, is this reality that if you understood what the term was, I guess it's American descendant of slavery, you have to like it's like if you're a descendant of, I mean, we all, like, a lot of us in the diaspora are descendants of people who were enslaved, right? But you have to understand that if you were enslaved, or the people who were enslaved were not going to get paid. You get what I'm saying? Like that's the whole point why you would say that somebody was enslaved, is to say that they were not going to get paid. So it's almost like we don't we don't understand what it was that was going on. You know, uh, like what was going on was that you were not going to get paid. But actually, I do mention reparations in this book because I think Amos Wilson mentions it, and the thing that I say about reparations in this book is the reality that even if white people did offer reparations at one point, like they took it back. And the thing is that when it comes to uh, black people in America, right? When it comes to black people in America, we have to realize that I mean, when it comes to nations and treaties, that you can make a treaty and then take it back. And then that's what nations do, unfortunately. But if they make a treaty and they take it back, that's it. And unless you can force them to do it, and that's what Dr. Ben was saying, unless you can force them to do it, that's it. You know what I mean? Like they could say, "Hey, look, we agree to, build this," and then they just don't. And it's like, well, what are you gonna do about it? And it's like if you can't do anything about it, then that's it. Now, if of course I'm not saying that. I mean, what I mean is that sure, if you could organize black people to do something about getting that, if you could force it such that white elites and white commoners all were like, yo, we need to give these black folk reparations or else, then yeah, that's one thing. But the way how it's being handled right now, and it's really important, the leadership of the ADS movement right now are what I would call a Scotty. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to support a Scotty at all. Okay, a lot of them are just looking out for themselves in a sense, right? But if let's say if it wasn't a Scotty leading it and they were, like you could force, the thing is that you could force a nation to do anything if you have the power to do so, because these are just people making these decisions. If you could make these people make this decision, sure. But the leadership right now is not even remotely interested in making these people make this decision. You know, they're just interested in lining their pockets. Okay, they're just interested in lining their pockets. They're just interested in promoting xenophobia or something. But yeah, that would be pretty much be it. Like the reality is just one is that they just weren't going to pay you. Like that's the whole reason why you would say that you were a descendant of somebody enslaved. They just weren't going to pay you. But I think there was a promise of a payment, and then they just took it back because they realized it might empower you too much. And why would they want to empower you? You know? And I think I think in the book, because I tell you Amos Wilson said something along the lines of I can't remember what it was, but there was some policy, maybe like welfare or something that. Oh no, he was saying that the government mostly benefited, like economically, mostly financially benefited, uh, like the upper class and the middle class, you know, as opposed to the lower class. And for me, it's like what I say in the book is something along the lines of, yes, that's exactly what nations are for. You know what I'm saying? If we build, like when we build a nation, we're going to build it, and it's and like you don't want a lower class per se, but if you did have a lower class, right? Let's say, particularly in America, when the lower class is not even white, right? For the most part, well, not for the most part. There's a lot of white lower class people, but what I'm saying is that white people are building systems or running systems to benefit them, not to benefit everybody. And I think one of the things that we buy into their rhetoric of trying to benefit everybody, when the reality is that they are out looking for themselves, looking out for themselves, and that's rich people looking out for rich people. You get what I'm saying? A lot of money is circulated around the Democratic Party because you got to realize the Democrats are like the most powerful institution in America, and the Republicans are the second most. You know, like usually, right? Uh, there's a lot of money around there where they're in, like where you're investing in these rich people are investing in these well, not just rich people, but white people are investing into the Democratic Party to benefit themselves, not to benefit poor black folk. Why would they care about that? You know what I mean? Why would you drop $1 million to benefit black folk? You know what I mean? Why would you push for uh Cory Booker or whomever, you know, in order to give to black folk, you know? And the thing is that a lot of black folk, like you said, like we say the ADOS movement, a lot of them, you know, are not like paying Cory Booker for anything, you know? But anyway, so that's what I would think about. Those are my thoughts, some of my thoughts. Uh yeah, so let's go forward in the book though. Uh let's see, Yosef Ben Yakinen. We got I got Leonard Jeffries. Leonard Jeffries was amazing. Uh let's see. So I'm gonna go to the next part, the documents. Let's see if I can get to this documents. I'm telling you, when I get to I got the love, I got the advice on love, both from Amos Wilson and from Yosef Ben Yakinen, you know? Again, like I said, I picked Yosef Ben Yakinen because he was a Garveyite. Uh, I also got some Robert Mugabe, to be honest. Uh, but not because I like him or nothing. It's just because he was saying something along the lines of he wants foreign investment from the diaspora, and it's like, dude, you have a nation, you know, and it's like this is the confused mentality that Africans, like even on the continent, have regarding what we can do as a people and how we can uplift ourselves. And that right there is like one of the fundamental things that we have to do. Oh, one other thing I have right here is look at it right here, Bobby Wright. So one time I heard somebody say that Bobby Wright said something, and I'm like, where did Bobby Wright say that? Because I only see like he only has a book, and it's a small tiny book, but it seemed like he was saying other things. So he has a lecture on YouTube, and the thing is that it's nowhere published, it's nowhere in a book. So of course I put it down and I analyze it though, because like I said, a lot of our ancestors are saying things, uh, and we have to analyze critically, and for the sake of empowerment. Like one of the things that Bobby Wright would say would be, uh, we are enslaved. He said today we're enslaved, right? Because we don't own any life sustaining institutions in our community. But then, like I say in the book, he then recommends 7 solutions. And this is the thing. No, sorry, eight recommendations. And when you look at these 8 recommendations, you realize that none of them pertain to uh, us owning life sustaining institutions. And that's really something critical, because even when I told you about, oh, what if black people had all this, whatever, like if you had all this money, you could just pay all your bills technically, or this white boy could just raise the price and get the money back. He could raise the price of water and get the money back, because you don't make your own water. And he's not going to sell you. It's like when Marcus Garvey was buying ships, he bought them all at a premium, and they're all dilapidated. So he had all this money, but because we weren't buying our own ships, they were sold for much more than they were valued, and they were dilapidated. And then he also needed a white crew. It's like they're so, but that's why you have to understand how we can get around that. Because if we don't get around that, like forget it. You know, if you can't depend upon your enemy. Okay, but then at the same time, you have to look at our situation, our status in this world, and see that to a large extent we are dependent on our enemy for a lot of things. So now I'm scrolling through like maybe like 200 pages. By the way, like I said, this book is massive. You know, I actually got a box of them, and it was difficult to lift up. You know what I mean? It was difficult to lift up. Uh, So let's see. Yeah, then you get to the essay. Woo, I'm telling you, man, when you get to that, when you get to page, let me show you. Page 291. That essay right there, the model for Pan African unity is just incomparable. You know? All right, so now we're going to the documents. So this is part four. And I mean, I don't really have to go over part five because like I said, it's just us talking about whatever. Okay, yeah. So I have the question and answers from. I have interviews from Chancellor Williams, uh, and I tell you, oh my gosh, you got to say to yourself, why did nobody write these things down? You know, like yeah, sure, they're on YouTube, and so on and so forth, but like, why are they not written down? And that is like, I'm telling you, this is just like just having this book in my hands is like another thing altogether. You know, I want to give you. Oh, the prophecy under Nesut Snafru, right? So, like I said, we go into the ancients, right? And this is something really interesting. Let me just say this. So, the ancients wrote, there's allegedly there's a fourth dynasty, Nesut. Nesut basically means king, right? Named Snafru, who saw, Sa'ah, named Neferti Yanane, who regaled this fourth dynasty, Nesut, with a tale of a 12th dynasty, Nesut. Now, what's interesting is this, that this probably never happened. Okay, so what happens is that you have the ancients making up a historical, like making up a story to justify their rulership. And I changed some of the words, obviously, from trader. I trade trader to a Scotty, but you're going to see something really interesting. So it says, here's what they say right after they like one Nesut replaces another. He says, then a Nesut will come from the south, a many the justified by name, son of a woman of Taseti, child of Upper Kemet. He will take the white crown. He will wear the red crown. He will join the two mighty ones. Rejoice, O people of his time. The Son of Man will make his name for all eternity. Eurasians will fall to his sword. Bastards will fall to his flame. Rebels to his wrath. Ascati to his might. As the serpent on his brow subdues the rebels for him, one will build the walls of the ruler to bar Eurasians from entering Kemet. This is the ancient Africans saying we want to bar the Eurasians from entering Kemet. Kemet means the black community, of course. The, the like this is going to look. I'm just gonna say you should get the book, right, or get the book, right, ASAP, because first off, like I said, there's gonna be this analysis, but it's also going to be just it's so rich. Like I said, the IT Constitution, and that's the thing with the Constitution of IT. I want to say that too. When you look into it, right, you got to ask yourself, well, when you see what it is, and you see what Dessalines did in terms of his government, because like I said, elites are really important to consider, right? Dessalines made the elites, like the elites of the government, mostly, let's say, bastard, right? Mostly mulatto, you want to say, right? Most of them were mulattoes in the government. Now, if the government is the most important institutions in the nation, right, and you give most of the governmental positions, and I'm talking about like 60%, 66% of the governmental institutions to mulattoes, right? then it's not longer a black nation. You understand? It's now a black population ruled by a mulatto nation. And then if you actually understood, like how these mulattoes were trained, like a lot of them were trained like in the Toussaint school, pretty much, or not Toussaint school, but like let's say Eurasianism, right? A lot of them were Eurasianist mulattoes, and that was the majority of the government, right? So then the question is, how was Dessalines going to not be assassinated? If remember, the elites are going to look out for themselves anyway. I'm telling you, and nobody's telling you this. Nobody's telling you this. When I was reading Irritated Genie, matter of fact, because it's in an Irritated Genie, they tell you that, yeah, most of them were mulattoes, and they're like, that's him showing, that's the lean showing you that he's trying to have an alliance. But if you're gonna give all of your leadership or all the power of your government to mulattoes, you can't then turn around and say, well, it's the mulattoes that took over. They didn't take it over; that you gave it to them. And you got to bear in mind that they were 120, like they were, uh, let's say 5% of the population. You know what I'm saying? They were 5% of the population, 60% of the government. I'm telling you, look, this is a book that you're gonna read. You're gonna read and you're gonna say, "Holy," well, not holy, but you're gonna say, "Wow, this is going to, this is the book to read and understand and bring around and really like change and impact the world with, because like I said, we can build nations. A large problem, like I said, Dessalines, if he had the book and he said, wait a second, let's actually keep the leadership African, you know let's keep the leadership black, he wouldn't have been assassinated. There's a lot of things in this book that will tell you, because like I told you about the brother Maurice Bishop. When you listen to his speech or when you read his speech, if you want to, right? You'll see him say he had a television crew who were looking around, Grenada, right? Because he's in Grenada, right? They were looking around Grenada, and they were asking him all sorts of questions, right? And then a few months later, they kill him. You know, a few months later, they just kill him. But when you look at how they kill him, you realize they killed him off of the information that he was giving them. And guess what? That television crew was ABC, the American Broadcasting Company. So he was trusting of these white boys poking around. They were asking him, "Hey, is this a barracks?" And he's like, "No, it's not a barracks. This is a so on and so forth." And by the way, there's an American. There's actually we're not attacking. We're not building a military base. We have an American university right here. And then when they kill him, they say, "Well, we killed him because there was an American university right there, and we felt like he might have threatened the like he could have threatened those students." Anyway, I'm telling you already, it's you know you have a book, you have a real book that you can read, and I want you to read it. I want you to read it. Is there any other questions that I should address, or should I head out? Should I dip? Should I dip? You know. All right, family. I don't want to talk all day. I don't. I want you to get this book, and I want you to see exactly what I'm talking about. You know, this is this is gonna be it. This is gonna be it. All right. So until we talk again, Nitalia too. You know, Nitalia too. The world is ours. You know, it's time to work. And again, like I said, nothing works in theory. All that works and works. It is time to work. Get yourself the Book of Power. It's on Amazon.com. And yeah, let's make it happen. But thank you so much for listening. And I'm out.